Let's see what are the steps to fill up the futures and options income in your income tax return. That is ITR-3. So here are the details of the futures and options transactions entered into by the taxpayer during the financial year 24-25. The taxpayer has entered into 4 transactions of futures and options in equity shares. We are given the selling amount as well as the purchase amount of the FnO transactions. Now let's see what would be the first step in calculating the details. The first step would be the calculation of net profit or loss from the futures and options trading. In the first transaction, the selling amount is 96,400 and the purchase amount is 81,100. And thus, the profit or loss from the first transaction would be 15,300. Likewise, we calculate the profit or loss from each of the remaining 3 transactions. And the total profit or loss that has been made or incurred by the taxpayer is rupees 30,070. So the first step has been calculated. Now what is the second step? The second step involves calculating the turnover from the futures and options segment. The turnover in case of futures and options transactions would be calculated individually for each of the transactions. And the turnover for each transaction would be the absolute value of the profit or loss earned from that transaction. Now let's see what does this mean. In case of first transaction, the profit earned is rupees 15,300. And thus the turnover would be the absolute value of the profit earned, which means 15,300 only. Likewise for the second transaction also. Now, in case of transactions in which we had incurred losses, the turnover here again would be the absolute value of the losses incurred. Thus, in case of third transaction, the turnover would be 8,175. This means we'll simply be ignoring the negative sign. Likewise for the fourth transaction, and thus the total turnover from futures and options would be rupees 60,890. And thus step 2 has also been calculated. Now before we start filling in the details in ITR-3, let's first quickly understand what exactly this futures and options income is. Any incomes or loss that is earned from the futures and options transactions is always to be treated as a normal business income. Yes, you heard that right. This won't be treated as a capital gains income. Instead, as per the income tax rules, it is supposed to be treated as a normal business income. Which means, in case you have any business expenses incurred with respect to these transactions, you can also claim the benefit of those expenses, such as rental expense, telephone expense, broadband expenses, or any other expenses relating to the futures and options transactions. Now let's quickly see how can we fill these details in the ITR. Let's quickly open the income tax return filing offline utility now. Now once you open the Excel based utility, you first need to fill in the part A of the general schedule, which is this one. This schedule contains the personal details of the taxpayer, such as the name, address, bank account details, phone number, the date of birth, and one additional option to choose from the old tax regime or the new tax regime. Once you fill in part A of the general schedule, we then move to the profit and loss schedule. And in case you're not maintaining proper books of accounts, then scroll to the bottom and fill in the details for serial number 64. Since all the incomes or losses that have been earned through futures and options are a normal business income, hence we'll be filling up the serial number 64 details. Further, since all the transactions are being conducted through banking mode, we'll be filling the details of the turnover in the first line, that is this one. and then mention the gross profit right here. In case you have any other business expenses, then you can mention it right here. In my case, it's not there, hence I'm mentioning 0. After filling in this schedule, move to part A of the balance sheet schedule, that is this one. And since you're not maintaining the proper books of accounts with respect to futures and options trading, scroll to the bottom and fill in serial number 6. Fill in all the details that are mentioned in serial number 6. That is, do not leave it blank. If there are no other details, insert 0. So this is how we show incomes or losses earned from the futures and options trading in case you do not maintain the proper books of accounts.